You are listening to the Go Get Them show. This is a discussion that inspires entrepreneurs to pursue their passion to create meaningful, impactful, and sustainable companies in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. This is your host, Arun Krishnakumar, together with my co-hosts, Maxon T. and Sheila Mburu. We sit down with entrepreneurs, operators, and investors across frontier markets to discover their experiences, lessons learned, and how they make an impact so you can too.
Own way to finance the development that we want to see. So I needed to kind of understand the different facets of this sector.
Factories and any other projects you want to highlight across Africa. So please go ahead. Yeah.
Hello, welcome to a brand new episode of Go Get Them. I'm very fortunate to be talking to Melanie Keita, the co-founder of Melanin Kapital. A brief introduction to Melanie's background. She spent the first 4 years of her career as analyst in the impact investment industry in Paris. She moved to the UN Habitat program in 2018, where she performed economic and financial analysis around governments' financing mechanisms for human settlement infrastructure. She spent the following 3 years at Finance in Motion, focusing on investing into microfinance institutions, SME finance, and agrofinance organizations. She was also responsible for promoting responsible financing through investment structuring. She is a visiting lecturer at ESCP Business School. And to add to all these amazing accolades, she is also one of the Forbes 30 under 30 and an active impact investor in Africa. Melanie, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be discussing with you, Arun and Aya.
So I haven't introduced Aya. So Aya is my colleague at Delphos International. Sorry, Aya, I shouldn't have missed you. Anyway, so we'll start with a very simple question to Melanie, if that's okay. So Melanie, please do tell us what kind of got you into this space of impact investing. What triggered that thought process?
So it's actually a very funny and personal story because I grew up in France, but I am from origin. I'm Congolese and Malian, so I always grew up with the idea of coming back to my home countries at some point. I never fully only felt French. I felt French and Malian, French and Congolese, European and African. So I really had this strong motivation to contribute and go back somehow. I did this journey when I was 21. For the first time, I went to Congo and met my grandfather for the first time. And I just realized that Congo was an amazing country. There was so much that could be done, a lot of agricultural potential, not at all what I have seen on TV, let's put it that way. And I just thought this is a pity that we're still having electrical cuts and water cuts the whole day because there's water everywhere, there's petrol everywhere, there's sun everywhere. There's no reason, rational reason why we should live that way, why my grandfather, my grandmother should live that way. So after, when I came back to France, I just dedicated myself to work on understanding how we can direct finance towards impact sectors in Africa. So at that time, I was not calling it impact sectors, but energy, education, agriculture. And by chance, after my first master's, I got this opportunity to work in this fund, which was called impact investing. I didn't know what that was, but they were telling that you were investing in green and social ventures. And I thought, well, that's exactly what I thought. That's exactly what I dreamt. So I started in 2015, and I really understood that this was the sector I wanted to grow into. So that's basically the whole story of why I chose impact investing and why I'm still trying to find more solutions to direct more financing towards impact, let's say.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much for your answers, Melanie. Now, just to double click on it a bit. So since you spent some time investing in France, impact investing in France, and you've worked in the United Nations in Kenya, and now you're focusing more into early stage investing, How do you really compare and contrast these ideas? What are the synergies that you see, and how do you really tap into them?
No, it's a good point, because I think like when you're in love with finance or with the investment part of the impact investing, you would maybe focus on one type of topic, right? You would be a VC investor or you would be an infrastructure investor. But my passion was really on the impact side of things for Africa, and understanding how can we innovate or how can we adapt all the financial concepts that I learned at school that were adapted for Europeans and American, let's say, context. How can we build our own way to finance the development that we want to see? So I needed to kind of understand the different facets of this sector. You know, impact investing is you have private investors, but you also have governments and you also have NGOs. And I was not understanding really how the governments and the NGOs were making their investment decisions, because for them, they're not looking at returns. So how do they make the analysis, and how do they decide that this project has the impact they're looking for, this project is the impact they want to achieve through the investment? So that's why I went also a bit at the UN for some time, trying to understand and put myself in the shoes of those governmental institutions, and talking a bit more with the government to see how this was matching in a way. And interestingly enough, this didn't really answer my questions, because I think that impact investing is still a sector that is in, inventing itself. And there is still a misunderstanding between the private investor and its expectations, and what the government wants for development in the country, and how they can merge together. So I would say that today I'm really focused on early stage investments, because that is the area I chose to start with. I thought that who I wanted to support were people of my age, let's say, like me, very young entrepreneurs who wanted to find solutions to solve the sustainable development goals in their community. And I figured that a lot of them are just starting their business or having very small businesses and need financing to get to the next level. So that's my point of entry, let's say, that I chose to work on impact investing. But of course, I hope that as we grow with Melanin Kapital, and as I grow myself, maybe we'll be able to also propose different investment products that can go into different sectors or different type of asset classes, let's say. But for now, that's the reason why I focused on early stage.
So should we maybe double click into Melanin Capital a little bit? Please do tell us about that initiative. You definitely sound excited about that, and we are excited for you as well. So please do tell us what is it all about?
Absolutely. So Melanin Capital is actually the first digital impact investment banking platform that aims at providing investors and funders investment-ready impact opportunities in the continent. And it didn't start that way. I can give you a little bit more about the story. In a bit before 2020, a bit before COVID, I was thinking of basically how we can look at innovative solutions that can help impact investors like me, for example, sitting in Germany, investing in smaller companies. So in the startups I was telling you about, led by youth, led by minorities or like underserved communities, I saw that from a European perspective, it was very difficult to do. For a diasporan perspective, that was definitely something that was important for me to figure out. So I worked in that sector for a while. I know that the money is there. The problem is how this money is being channeled. And I had the chance to be with my best friend at the time, Ian Minjiri, who was telling me how himself, based in Kenya, he struggled to get money, and now he's coming to Germany and he realizes that money is everywhere. So he was just interrogating me about my own job and about how I'm making my investment decisions in Africa, and why I'm not looking at those kind of businesses. And this is where it kind of sparkled in our mind, and we decided to try to launch a technology solution that could help more impact investors to go down into those small scale, I would say, transactions in impact sectors. So for this, we had to really understand our market first. So we did without the technology. I always say technology solutions solve problems that exist without the technology. So you really need to understand offline what is the issue and why those entrepreneurs don't get access to that funding. And with the first program that we launched in 2020, fully online, with 10 entrepreneurs only, we realized that those entrepreneurs were not matching, let's say, the criteria and the eligibility standards of those investors. So the first job that we thought we would have to do is really to make sure that us who understand the investors make sure that those entrepreneurs match and check all those boxes. And by doing so, through our investment readiness programs, we realized that this was a very unprofitable business and that this is very, very difficult to do this on very small businesses, one by one, with man hours that you build in Europe. And because we didn't want to be an NGO or something like that would not be profitable, we just did a lot of things for free at the beginning, trying to understand very well what would be the pinpoints that we could digitize and delete the man intervention. So this is how now Melanin Kapital platform has been able to be fully operating. So what we do, we work with specific investors. In that case, our main anchor partner is Absa Bank. Absa tells us that they want to invest in startups, but they need to have those KPIs, those documentations. And for 6 months, we help those entrepreneurs to get to that level. We gather all the documentation. We even take an auditor's PwC to just tell Absa we have verified and this is conform. And then Absa can just look at the file and invest. And this is lower transaction costs for them and also lower risk because we have made sure that the strength of the operational strength of the startups is higher than initially. So that's the whole, let's say, story of Melanin Kapital growth.
Thank you so much for that, Melanie. That was awesome.
I just want to double click a bit on the partnership with Absa Bank. If you would be okay, Melanie, to give us few, just few information also for the startups that are based in Kenya or based in East Africa that are watching. So can you give us just few information on the partnership and the opportunity for African startups or companies as a whole?
Yes, no, absolutely. So with Absa, we had these minds that basically married on the objective of supporting more women entrepreneurs and more women in Kenya through entrepreneurship and business. So we decided to help Absa to be able to disburse more loans towards this target group. And they told us about their difficulties, the risk that is associated to it, and the lack of pipeline that they had in that segment. So we proposed to them to build a full program where we will identify the women entrepreneurs that could benefit from their loan products, and that would be at their standards, and we would provide them with the right training and the right advisory so that they can get to that level. So with Absa now, we have a full program which is called Tungane 2X na Absa. Let's unite to see her empowered. Tungane means let's unite. So the idea of like different financial initiatives coming together to support one objective, one social impact objective. And with Absa, they have a women agenda, which is called To See Her Empowered. So this is really the marriage of the two, and the idea of not only providing capacity building, not only providing finance, but providing both of them. So for the entrepreneurs that are listening to us, the call for applications is now completely live. You will have until 18th of October to apply. And then from 18th of October, we start with a training on fundraising to kind of teach and have different guest speakers telling you about what they are expecting from you when you are fundraising. And then after this month of masterclass, we onboard you into a full program where you will have to provide us with your documentation, and where we see that you are still have gaps, we will support you with mentors to fill those gaps and then get fully ready before Absa Bank disburse loans. And all the loans of Absa Bank are guaranteed by the African Guarantee Fund, which allows us to basically provide you with loans without asking about collaterals.
Thanks, Melanie. I mean, I just want to understand a little bit more about your views on the African continent as a whole, particularly the venture ecosystem there. You spent quite a bit of time there, and you're now looking at you're quite hands-on in that space. Please do tell us about what excites you about that space. One. The second thing I would like to also understand is, in your view, because you're preparing a lot of entrepreneurs for pitching and fundraising, what is the most important attribute that you see in an entrepreneur, um, uh, whom you kind of position for a particular fundraising or funding opportunity with a potential investor or a lender?
No problem. Thank you very much for the question. So, what excites me about that space, really, it's the people, like the entrepreneurs in themselves. They really they give me the energy I need to fuel my day, literally, because I see the passion that they have, the will that they have to change their communities and change the status quo. And this is really what I love about working with early stage investments. You know, like it's not. It's important to work at a macro level, and I really enjoyed when I used to work on larger transactions and with different stakeholders. But I feel that just having the feeling of seeing you in the mirror and hearing the same problems that you've been facing and seeing other people finding solutions, you have the idea of this movement that is coming and the hope basically that I have for the continent. So I'm really excited about that. Of course, on the performance perspective, like you can see that as those if we talk a little bit more finance on the finance perspective, there is more and more startups that are managing to get into the unicorn sphere and that are managing to raise more money. So there is definitely an increase in the traction from investors into the African continent. So that's exciting. But what I like is that we're not just financing companies that are making a lot of money. Like you're really investing in companies that are changing people's life, that are changing from someone who could have never get a bank account, from someone that can transact through their phone, from someone that was having very low agricultural outputs, from someone that actually can make a living by having their farm. You know, like those technologies, I find them so exciting and so life-changing that this is what keeps me into that space and will keep me in the next few years. When I looked, when back in the days, I also looked at impact investment in Europe, and that also ties to why I'm not necessarily in love with the finance type or the side of the impact investment and more on the impact side. I was not. The ventures that I saw were just not exciting me as much. I would say, like, it's nobody's fault. It's just because for me, I really want to see in my generation and for my kids that who would be Africans and who will like grow up in the continent, that there was a change and that we as parents, we have made whatever we could to change. For example, in Congo, the fact that we're not having electricity cuts anymore or water cuts because we bring that technology. So that's what excites me a lot in that space. You know, like just as a small anecdote, I don't know if I can make those personal anecdotes to you, but when I came to Congo for the first time at 21 years old, my father came with me, and that was the first time for him to come back after 25 years. And we went everywhere from his school to the place he used to play. And he told me, you know what, that's crazy because these places have not changed for 25 years. And I thought that was so sad. Like there's nothing sadder than that. You cannot come back. Even in Kenya, I left in 2018. I came back mid 2019. It was already changed. It was already like there was a bridge. Everything was changing. And this is hope. Like we need to see that we are moving forward, and that's what really excites me about that space. I have to say, like I see that we have so much progress and so many changes coming up. So yeah, sorry, I took a bit more time on that question, but I know that you have the second one on the most important attribute. For me, and it is not a technical thing or like nuclear science. For me, what I think is the most important for an entrepreneur that is trying to raise funding is to be ready to continue if you don't have the funding. Because I have a lot of entrepreneurs that are telling me, yeah, but if we don't get that money, we can't make it, we can't continue. No, that cannot be an option. You have to be able to continue your business, to generate more revenues, to think, to innovate, to have that grit and that motivation to transform your business and grow. So for me, that's already a red flag when I hear those kind of feedback. The money can come and cannot come. It's possible. Even us at Melanin Kapital, so many times we've tried to raise money and we had like we were almost sure to get it, and last minute they have changed. Last minute there can be COVID. You have to continue to work and generate more revenues. This is failure cannot be an option for you. So that's what I'm looking a lot into the entrepreneur's character, at least.
Sure. I mean, you've touched upon several points that resonates with me, right from why Africa is more exciting from an impact perspective than Europe. I mean, I feel the same thing when I go back to India. The thing I find it, and I don't know if it resonates with you, is everywhere I look around me in India, I see an opportunity, a business opportunity. Oh, I could fix that and then make a unicorn out of that. I could fix this and make a unicorn. And I have the same feeling every time I go back to India. But it's sorry to kind of hear when in 25 years a place hasn't changed a lot. It's something worrying. And finally, to touch upon your last point, one of the kind of a guiding principles I kind of try to use in my life and career is you want to really do something to get to somewhere. Don't always put this on this critical path to get there. Try to get there even without this. Like say you want to do an MBA to make a career transition. Try to make the transition without the MBA. If the MBA happens, great. If you, I think that approach really would work. And then I advise people that I sometimes mentor and give them the same thing. Don't put these things on critical paths. Sometimes they may not happen. But keep your kind of focus there. Yeah, it's very important. Anyways, over to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to also mention that is actually the best advice that any entrepreneur can get. You need to continue even though you don't have the funding. And as you know, Melanie, we worked on a few projects together, and that is something that I see all entrepreneurs, all of them say that we need to get the funding, and the funding is actually the most important part of our company. I think this is why we also have educate and advice in our slogan. And correct me if I'm wrong, Melanie. Sometimes when you do not have funding, or who knows, sometimes you might not be investment ready. It doesn't mean that your company is going bad. It just means that it's a process, and you kind of have to trust the process. Educate and advice, that something that Melanin Capital also provides, is something that can empower also the entrepreneurs to look at the bright side of everything, and also help them see how they can finance and how they can keep going internally without requiring external funding, which I believe it's such an amazing advice and such an amazing thing to do to founders. As African myself, I know that we always look at the positive sides of our development, and we really went so far. We really went so far. I don't know. I just remember a couple of decades ago, it just wasn't the same. Even the start of the early stage scene is not the same. But for now, for the purpose of the discussion, if you can just tell us, Melanie, according to you, what are the gaps that are still here in the early stage sector, and how can we close those gaps even more?
Thank you very much for that question, Aya, because I have to say it's a research in progress even for me, because you see, like one thing that I've seen a lot in social media is that African entrepreneurs don't need to be mentored anymore. They need money. And I kind of agree with that. Like, of course, we also provide education and advisory, and it's very important because a lot of entrepreneurs are just simply not ready. But I think that, we have to also find new ways and new instruments, not traditional finance instruments, new instruments that can help those entrepreneurs to get money. I'm telling you why I'm thinking that. Melanin Capital is also based in Germany. Do you have even an idea of how much subsidies were available in Germany during COVID for the small businesses? It's unbelievable. Like, the German government has mobilized so much free money for the SMEs, even for startups. And you could have money from the state government, from the federal government, from specific institutions. Like, in Europe, I'm sorry, but we do not rely on private funding only. We do not rely only on loans and only on private equity. This is not true. I'm French, so let's talk about the agricultural sector in France. It is heavily subsidized. Why would we expect all the time that an agricultural like corporation in Ghana or in Senegal are yielding 15% of return, when in France we are literally subsidizing all our production of milk, cattle, and pork? Like, this for me doesn't make sense. And I think that we are like, private finance is very important for a target segment of the private sector in Africa, and it's working well, and we've showcased the results, and the performance of those companies is really, really outweighing what we can see in Europe. But for the young early stage businesses that are just starting, I think we need more. We need like a more blended approach. We need more support that would not expect necessarily returns. And I think this is what is missing in the market, because entrepreneurs get trained and then they don't get this extra push that can help them to get to the next level. It's a bit like if you're going to the university and then you have no jobs. Like, you feel like there's like a gap fully that you are jumping with both feet. So that's why, for example, with ABSA, for us, it was very important to partner to discuss also with the African Guarantee Fund and have the loan guaranteed, because we know that the risk methodology of ABSA is meant to also protect the interest of the bank and the depositors. So we have to manage to also support the bank with a de-risking mechanism that would make them feel more comfortable going into this. And there are other instruments that are available with, for example, first loss subsidies to support investors to co-invest into startups, for example. There are also like other supports of, like, for example, like recoverable grants or like zero interest rate loans, where the company, if they are doing well, then they give back the money. If they're failing, well, that was a grant in the first place, so we don't get the money. But at least this gives a place for entrepreneurs that are just in between to go to the next level. One last thing that I see is a very big gap, before I pass away, is the lack of local investors. That's especially, of course, not Nigeria, South Africa, even Kenya has a very developed local angel investment network. But if you look at the countries, for example, I'm coming from, like Congo or Mali, we are really lacking angel investors, people that are ready to put 10K, 20K, 50K into a startup and do also this venture building work that would be necessary for that startup to go to the next level. In the US, if you're looking at the Silicon Valley, there's a lot of local capital that is here. It's not only coming from the international investors. And I think that's a big issue, because for us, we're very, very dependent of a lot of international investors, which is which cannot it cannot be this only dependency, because international investors also have their own methodologies. They don't necessarily know the context. We need more people that also can be with the startup every day, come to the office, see what is happening, support them, maybe challenge them on some decisions that they're making. And if you're like all the way to Germany like me, you can't do that. You can only do it via phone. So that's, I think, the two things that is still missing in the market, in my point of view.
Sure,
Amazing.
Melanie, and to add to the last point you mentioned about having local GPs or fund managers, I think one of the key criteria that these days LPs ask for is if you're setting up a fund in Nigeria to serve Nigerian entrepreneurs, you've got to have Nigerian GPs on board. So that is starting to become more of a almost a criteria to fund these funds, and it's a good thing. You're starting to see a first batch of entrepreneurs almost pass out, or rather graduate in Africa. It's happened, I think with India it's happened uh, 15 years ago. With Indonesia it's probably happened 5 years ago. We're seeing quite a lot in Africa now, with several large deals and investments going in, and they are going to kind of inspire those funds and local venture communities. So now one last question, and by no means is the least important question. It's probably the most important question. I've done quite a lot of research around your background, and one key theme keeps coming up, which is gender equality. And for me, as I mentioned earlier when we were having this conversation, I'm a big fan of Raghuram Rajan, and he's written a book called Third Pillar, where he talks about how state, markets, and communities have to come together. The three pillars have to come together to drive any material transformation happening in the society and in the industry. With gender equality, I think over the last 2 years or so, we are starting to see some VCs who are focused on women. They're mostly on the developed world side, less so on in the emerging markets. But there's still that voice is coming out. However, I really feel that the actual transformation is not happening on the ground from a community perspective, and that is really what is going to drive more women entrepreneurs to come out of families and say, "Hey, I'm not shackled by my family. I'm going to kind of do this thing. This is my dream. This is my ambition. I'm going to go for it." Where do you stand there? What is your take around this thing? I mean, what more needs to be done apart from just having more VC funding?
No, yeah, that's a very interesting question, and yeah, it's always like this. Of course it depends by country. In Africa, I think, like, for example, where, like, in Congo, and yeah, especially in Congo, like, I would say we have also like a bias of having very matriarchal society. So, for example, in my family, like, all the women works, and all the women are having their own businesses and putting food on the table, I would say, and they're struggling from access to finance. But I know that it's not always the case in all the countries in Africa, and I think that it's the responsibility at so many levels. Like, it's such a holistic issue, so it's the responsibility at home to allow this balance, to let the women also have their own dreams and be able to launch their own business. This is the responsibilities also at the business level, to be able to employ more women, and to be able to make sure that they have equal opportunities within the company. It's the responsibility of the financier, I mean, of the investors and banks, to make sure that there's no biases in disbursing funding towards women, and having the biases that maybe they will not be dedicated fully to the business, or maybe there will be like struggles in the way that like less performance because of the fact that they're women, because this is still very much into the market, I think. And then there is the responsibilities of the government to also put together the right infrastructure and support for women to be able to, like, it comes from the education of their children, like having the possibilities for them to keep the children at daycare and schools for longer hours, so that they can have more time to work. So it's a very holistic perspective, and I think that For me, it's still a long journey. I'm still learning a lot how we can empower more women through business. And and I'm someone that is always going towards methodologies because I'm always trying to find a framework to find it and make it systemic. So in finance, they actually deploy a framework that we are using at Melanin Kapital. It's called the 2X challenge criteria. So through this framework, like we know how it is to empower women through financing. You have to finance women-owned companies or women-led companies, women employing women, or enterprises employing women, or enterprises that benefit women through their products and services. So this is something that I thought, at least that we believe we can act in a systematic way, and that all financial institutions and development institutions are trying to focus on to support. When it comes to more community support and more support at home, I find it very, very difficult to tackle, but it is the foundation of everything, and we are still very far to achieve our objectives on that.
Thank you so much for that, Melanie, and I'm glad that you're taking the 2x challenge. It's 2x challenge is pretty much something that I hear almost I mean almost every day. I mean, before this, I was on a call with a huge fintech in South Asia, and they are funded by lots of DFIs, and they were talking about the 2x challenge as well. So it's fascinating how this kind of top-down push from across the world is kind of starting to kind of make things better on the ground. And on that bright note, I really thank you for your time today and your insights. I was very glad at actually having you as a guest.
Thank you so much. I was very excited to talk to you. It was a very, very rich conversation, and yeah, very happy to discuss more in the future about those topics. As you can see, I'm very passionate, and it's great to also see your passion into the topic. So thank you so much for having me.
Cheers, man.